Hey, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another TAUS webinar. My name is Annemarie van der Meer, and I'm here today with a few gentlemen that you probably all know because they've been in the industry for quite some time. And today we're talking about the importance of language data. So for a couple of years, we've been organizing the TAUS events, as you may know, and we've always been asking all the MT gurus on the stage, what is the quality of these MT engines, and always the answer is data. So now we're no longer talking just about MT engines, we're talking about AI models, which in fact is just, or MT model engines are AI models. And we have a few gentlemen here today that have been using some of that data to advance their MT engines or AI models. So I won't be talking too much because there is a lot to talk about today. We have Manuel Herranz, CEO from Pangeanic, Marco Trombetti CEO of Translated, and Spence Green, CEO of Lilt here, along with two of my colleagues, Amir Kamran, Solution Architect at TAUS, and our own CEO, Jaap van der Meer. So Jaap, I'll just give the floor to you to do a bit more introductions and kick off the conversation today.
Thank you, Annemarie. Yes, welcome everybody also from me. We have a very masculine kind of webinar today. We tried very hard to find a few more women besides Annemarie to talk to you today about data, but I don't know what it is. It's not like it's only men working in NLP and data. I'm thinking about ourselves. Amir, you're probably the only. No, David as well, but for the rest we have 4, 5, 6 sort of NLP engineers, and they're all female, but apologies for that. But we have the best people here for sure to talk about this topic of data, and of course everybody knows that this is a topic close to our heart. TAUS got into the data business a long time ago, 2000. To be precise, we called for a meeting. In TAUS, New Mexico. Just a little while ago, I memorized that. I was back in TAUS, New Mexico. We invited people to come to this very remote kind of hippie place with the goal of getting agreement on sharing data for the better functioning of machine translation. And they came, and we created the TAUS Data Cloud at that event. Well, as you may know, and otherwise we'll remind you of that, TAUS is running a data sale campaign until the very end of this month, and that is the real occasion for this webinar. In those early days, it was kind of an exclusive offering for the big tech companies and the few dedicated MT developers who trained their engines to improve the performance. Now everything is different since last year, and it's gradually we start to realize, that we're living in a different world. MT has become sort of old-fashioned or traditional AI, or I don't know how we want to call it. And but what it also means is that many more people, companies are potentially in the market for data. There is and that's the question for this discussion here in the next hour. There's still a lot to be gained if we work on our own data, or we find more data to improve the engines, whether it's the traditional machine translation engines, traditional AI, or the new famous LLMs, hybrid models with SLMs and LLMs. Everything is possible these days, and that's what we're going to talk about. So before we dive into the key questions here, like what does it take to turn your TMs into good training data? What kind of techniques and tools are out there to clean and prep your data? And most importantly, what are the benefits that you're looking for, and did you actually achieve this? Did you get these improvements that you were looking for? And for us, a very selfish question, you know, did the TAUS data really help you? How much benefit did you get from TAUS? Before we get into these, all these very factual and precise and to the point questions, because full disclosure here, the gentlemen and their companies here on the call have all been users, customers of TAUS data in the past. So they're the best to talk about this. Before we get into that, I'd like to ask, you know, by way of further opening this this discussion, each of the look at the very fundamental shifts in our industry, sort of with the move into AI and how did it affect your business. I think the two of you, Manuel and Marco, you were more in sort of the traditional translation business to some extent, and you became now technology companies, technology platforms. And for you, Spence, it's maybe the other way around, right? You launched a technology company and you kind of started offering more traditional services through your platform, if I have that right. But there we go. I ask you now to elaborate a little bit on this and sharing your own perspective on how you see the big shifts in the environment. Manuel, why don't you go first?
Okay, thank you, Jap. So, well, first things first, I was not supposed to be here. The representative from Pangeanic was going to be a lady, one of our engineers, Marie-Angelis, but unfortunately, she's taken a long Easter break. So, yeah, you have to put up with me. But anyway, I probably have a few more details about it with TAUS. So, yeah, we were very enthusiastic from the beginning with TAUS. I think we are not at the TAUS meeting in the States, but we were at the first meeting, I do remember that, in Brussels with the European Commission. And when we were not even speaking about data sharing, that came several years later. Okay, to answer the several questions, several points. Yes, I do share with Marco the fact that Pangeanic, such as translated, was a full-blown LSP or language, modern language service provider. I like to talk about translation service provider because there is a difference, and I'm making that's part of my pitch this year. And we came to technology through a encounter with a local university, a Polytechnic in Valencia, and two people that ended up being national prizes for computing, Enrique Vidal and Casa Cuberta, two professors. And together with the local computer institute, we created the first statistical machine translation platform. Now, TAUS was fundamental in the creation of that platform because in those days, to create an engine with 8 million words, not segments, was tremendous. There was a tremendous feat. Not everybody had 10 million words to share. And then, okay, we can talk a little bit more if you want on data cleaning, etc., which was extensive in those days because obviously the format that you fed those engines and then later on neural engines and well, you can feed LLMs, you can feed TMXs to LLMs as well for other tasks. They were not clean at all, and translators were not educated to translate in a certain way that would be not machine readable, but machine learning. It would benefit machine learning. So the amount of cleaning that there was in those days was astronomical compared to the amount of automated cleansing that goes on nowadays. So I don't know whether that answers the first batch of questions, Jab?
Yeah, sure. That's go back in history. Maybe just brief. My question also was, you know, you were early making this transformation to becoming a much more tech-savvy kind of provider in this. You came from the tradition, but well, in time for what started to happen just last year, and just maybe a brief sort of summary, sort of your perspective on the latest big AI changes in our industry.
Okay, so there's going to be an article on Multilingual about this, actually. I don't want to spoil it because it's quite provocative. The article is called Language is No Longer Human.
Oh, very provocative, huh?
Exclusive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And with that, I'm trying to say, well, they've had it for a couple of months. I think it's time they publish it. But this is part of my pitch to clients as well. Until a year and a half ago, okay, we believed that humans, that what separated us from the rest of creatures or inhabitants in this world was the fact that humans talked. Monkeys don't talk. My dog doesn't. So my dog can look at me. There may be some kind of communication there if I hold a biscuit. The only species that talked coherently was the human race. Now, that stopped being the case in December 2022 because we had machines that produce human-like sentences, speech. We may argue how much they have hallucinated, less and less every day. If you can make them hallucinate, you can. Obviously, you can prompt an LLM and it will answer. If you delve too much, if you ask too many questions about something it doesn't know, it will very soon start to hallucinate. But you cannot say that language, the construction of those sentences is not human. I mean, I've heard many humans saying nonsense. That didn't make it non-human. There are humans that talk nonsense. So I came to this industry as from engineering. My education and training is from Ford and Rolls-Royce. So I've always grown or looked at this industry from with amazement, thinking, how come machines cannot make the product? Every industry has machines making the product, whether they are sleeping tablets, whether it's a shirt, whether it's a pair of shoes, a film, a video. You have machines helping humans manufacturing the products or doing high 90% of the products. And then you have humans doing quality control, not quality assurance, not reproofing, no, they have quality control. Okay, when I worked for the automobile industry, car manufacturers will buy many parts and inspect one in every X. And if they assume that if they don't find anything faulty, and you have a box full of nails, and you sample 10, and the 10 are okay within dimensions, the box is good. You make one, okay. Why? How come that mentality did not apply to the translation, localization? Well, it is.
So this is an apotheose in your career.
Yeah.
Right. Language is no longer human.
So now,
well, let's switch to Marco, who I think also had not a language education, but more kind of engineering, perhaps. You can tell us about that. But anyway, you started as a traditional language service provider, also moved into technology. But your credo is we believe in humans. So a slightly different perspective, maybe. Can you elaborate a little bit on the latest sort of impressions from your side?
With pleasure, yeah. And yes, you're right. So my background is in astrophysics.
Yeah, exactly.
I come from the star, and I got into language because I met my wife, Isabel. She's the linguist, and I first fell in love with the girl, and then with the language problem that I don't regret both. It's two lovely problems, probably the most interesting problems, especially languages. Is an incredible problem to work on. And so before saying this, let me recap something that sometimes we forget. So number one, machine translation has been the very first form of AI, the first attempts Turing, Weaver, they're all studying AI. They were thinking about translation. So MT second is the hardest problem in AI to solve, because language, and again, to connect with Manuel, on my side, it's the most human thing we have. And so in order to translate, you deeply need to understand how we model reality as humans. And if you make a little mistake in the interpreting of reality, then you cannot translate correctly. If you take an LLM, you make a mistake and an hallucination. You have seen many product demos. People don't really notice the mistakes. But if you have a small mistake in the interpretation of reality in a translation model, then it makes us laugh immediately. So transformer, so GPT, generative pre-trained transformer, the transformer was invented for machine translation. So we've been pioneer in bringing this technology for the rest of the world, and ChatGPT is a translator. Instead of translating between English and French, it's translating from question and answer, but the principle is the same. So this is, we are in an industry that is a pioneer in AI and a pioneer in applying the most sophisticated techniques. Now we have a much bigger, everybody's got interested in this, but we don't have to forget the origin. So to connect to your question, so super exciting time, okay? Because I've been working on this for a very long time, and it's really adventurous time. It's now exciting, scaring. It's like I went to sail around the world, 10 meters wave, 100 kilometers an hour. I came back, and it's more exciting here in the office, the adventure, than what I had in the ocean. And that is, it's unexpected for me. Okay, even the fears. So I also had a very sad moment that maybe disconnect with Manuel partially, because it's with the progress of AI that I've seen this year, I realized that one thing. We always refer as humans as the benchmark. But I quickly realized that there is no law in physics that set the limit of intelligence to what humans are. We are not the benchmark of intelligence. We're just the most sophisticated species in this planet. And our brain is not increasing in size, in capacity. The neuron moves at the same speed. The neuron is 100 billion neurons, always the same amount. Instead, we're making incredible progress every year with artificial brains. So we're not the benchmark. We will be exceeded by far. Unicity, what makes us unique as humans, is what makes us interesting and beautiful, is who we are, but we should not care a lot about intelligence. This is not the best thing of humans. And so this was a very sad moment for me when I discovered and I realized that. But then, I started focus on another thing, say, oh, this is a tool. I want that intelligence. I want a new calculator that is making multiplication much better than me. And actually, I want it and I need it. So that's the perspective on this. And I think we are now in the perfect time, in the perfect place. It's not simply the time of AI, it's the time of AI and language. It looks like they were targeting artificial general intelligence through language. And so, we are the for many years. We should make sure that we take this opportunity. It would be very stupid from our side, being in this position, not to take advantage of this incredible change.
Thank you. So it was an emotional moment at some point, and that's where we are different from machines, right? They don't have emotions. Yeah. All right, Spence, how are you, and what is your perspective? Have you had any emotions recently about what's hitting us here in the market?
I have had a few emotions recently. I don't know how much about the localization industry, but I do have emotions from time to time. Yeah. I agree with what Marco and Manuel have said. What Marco said is true, which is people were working on machine translation in the in the early 50s. The first paper was published in 1951, so which was before the term artificial intelligence was coined in 1956 by John McCarthy. And so people have been working on this for a long time. I think it's important to distinguish there's a difference between people working on it in research and people working on it in this particular industry. And so like the history of our company, my co-founder and I met working on Google Translate back in 2011. And if you'll remember then, I mean, machine translation in those days was kind of a joke. Like people would post news stories about funny things that Google Translate did, but it was super useful. And the reason we got interested in, we have both research backgrounds, so we're both researchers, and we got interested in localization because we went and talked to the Google localization team, and they didn't use Google Translate at all. And we thought this was completely.
Remember
Why
that?
would you not use the tool that exists in the same company?
Yeah.
And so I think that you've been able to, and certainly our initial, when we started the company, we just wanted to be a technology company. And what we learned was that to succeed in this industry, certainly at that time, you kind of had, if you're going to come at it from a technology perspective, you kind of had to control the whole thing. You couldn't really, partner with anyone. But the way that we always looked at it from a machine learning perspective was you just needed a source of training data from somewhere. And you get that from linguists verifying the output of systems. And so I think that is still, even today, the, human feedback tuning is the most crucial part of building these systems for actual operational applications. You've got to tune them to the different use cases you're working in, and you get that data from people. And so, what I think is really great is that AI has become mainstream, and now everybody in business it, and so it's kind of been de-risked. And I think our industry has a great opportunity that we have the perfect AI use case. And for those people who are already using, have already taken the leap to like fully transform their program, they get recognized for that, which is awesome. And if you haven't done that yet, there's the best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago or today. So it's like, you just do it now. And so I think, the thing that has really changed is when we talk about the industry specifically, it's that AI has become mainstreamed and sort of de-risked, and everybody knows that they have to do it now. But actually that was true 5 years ago, I would argue. So now's the time to do it.
But now it's happening. And is everybody doing it now? Or our impression was that people were still slow until maybe very recently we see some movement in the market. But what's your impression?
Last year seemed like a lot of confusion, and this year people are acting. Yeah.
Here again, trying to be hands-on. This was all a bit philosophical, and I don't want to sort of skip you for this, but I can say, of course, we're a different beast here in this panel. We didn't start as a translation company, nor as a pure technology company providing machine translation. We've always been focused on data. But you can step in here and maybe share your perspective. But I've worked with you for together 7 years or so, and I see your excitement just increasing. And I think I can summarize for all speakers here that we're in sort of the evolution. But please, some further perspectives briefly here, Amir, if you like.
I think, what everyone said is true. And the thing that was interesting is that people are really accepting the change. So it's not like that people are resisting this. So everyone is excited about AI, and they are looking for different use cases and how they can use, especially in the localization industry, they can use these large language models in different kind of problems. So that's very encouraging. And but of course it's a new thing, so it will take some time for how they can use it, and where the purpose is more reliable, and where they have to still rely on the smaller models. Because I think one thing that people don't understand, that the MT architecture that was being used and these large language models, they are not fundamentally very different. They are trained on the same transformer architecture. It's just the size of the parameters and size of the data that's different, and the purpose of the training is different. But still, the smaller language these MT models, they are focused on one specific task, so they are still doing their job much better than these big machines, big models. So the data still plays a big role, and that's, I think, most important point in for us, because we are focusing on that. And from the last few years, we are trying to see where the data can fit. We started to do domain-specific customization of MT, and that was a very interesting paradigm. But now people are really confused whether everyone should use that, or try to see whether they can transform large language models to do the translations. But the need of the data is still there. Whether you are doing MT customization or large language model customization, you still need data. Good data, quality data. Maybe the amount of data you don't need that much now, because there are pre-trained models available. So you need just the quality of the data in different domains, in different niches, for different language pairs, for low resource languages, and then you can actually fine-tune models that can work for your problem.
Yeah. The premise here is that for this call is that again, the TAUS data has found solid, good customers for the past 10 years or more. The big tech companies and a handful of dedicated MT developers, and we're assuming also based on the observation that the large language models are trained for more than 90% on English data only, that there is now a big need for multilingual data that the translation industry has been nurturing, developing for many years, and TAUS in particular, of course, has been our key focus. That's been our core business. And many people in our audience here today, language or technology companies, customers for data, and we want to educate, if we can, a little bit what it takes to go through that journey. So the first question is, what does it take to turn translation memory data into good quality data for the training of LLMs or traditional MT engines? Amir, since you had the word and you've been doing a lot of that, can you elaborate a little bit on that? If you do have later on in this webinar any slide or anything that you want to show, because it can be quite technical at some point, you can share the screen, we can show it on the screen here. But Amir, what are the steps here? If you can start, and then
Yeah, sure. So in our experience, whenever we receive these translation memories, we can find out that there is like a history with all TMs. So they grow with time, and then there are so many errors that can be introduced in these translation memories. So first of all, you have to do a lot of cleaning. You have to see whether there are there are misalignments of translation, or some kind of erroneous translation are introduced in that. So the cleaning is the most important first step. But then cleaning has a big pipeline. So you have to see what kind of cleaning you have to perform, and you have to first maybe tokenize, identify the language, and do the heuristic kind of steps. But now with all these new models, you can actually go beyond that and can maybe apply embeddings-based cleaning, and that works really well. And we are doing this for some time now, and not only that, but we have built a whole solution on top of that with quality estimation, which is basically based on that. So with that, actually, you can not only just based on the words you can do things, but based on the meaning of the sentence, you can actually see whether the translation is correct or not. And based on that, you can take decisions and transform the data. And also, depending on the need, you can do more than that. So if you are doing just empty training or empty customization, then whatever is coming out of the translation memory, you can use that. But if you are doing, for example, training of QE models, then you need to actually generate synthetic data. So, for example, you have to also generate data that looks bad, examples of bad translation, or you can introduce different errors in the data and then use that to train quality estimation models. So with TAUS, we already have these services encapsulated in like one package. So we can do cleaning, but we can also generate data from TMs that will be readily customization or quality estimation training.
Yeah. And thanks, Amir. And Spence, in your business, day-to-day business, is cleaning and prepping data, is that kind of a constant process that you have people working on all the time? Is that very laborious, very costly? Can you elaborate a little bit on that from your perspective?
Yeah, I think that there are a couple of phases of filtering. The first is if you're going to do pre-training yourself. So then you've got, and if you're going to pre-train on whole documents or on aligned parallel text. So there's data filtering there. And when we pre-train on parallel text, we use, embedding models and model-based filtering, as Amir suggested. And then you've got filtering if you're going to do fine-tuning, whether it's supervised fine-tuning or HF or whatever you choose. And there, the filtering, those algorithms are more sensitive to data quality than the pre-training. So the data filtering is more, you get best performance if you filter more aggressively, which is where, some of the data from TAUS we found to be most useful is in the fine-tuning process.
Yeah. Is it something you have? Do you have people doing this full time, like working on data? Is it in your Yeah,
we do have the data.
You need that, huh? Yeah. Marco, on data, there are all kinds of data. People talk more and more about longer form data. Context is becoming more important. What's your take on it? Is because translation memories are by default segment-based and not document-based. How do you look at the types of data and what's the most useful data in translated business for the training of your engines?
Yeah, let me say that models are getting bigger and more intelligent. And for that reason, they're able to extract more information from data. So the baseline, still parallel data, is a great starting point. So, before starting anything more complex, people should get more parallel data, and it's a very good start. Then the technique,
parallel meaning multilingual data.
Parallel multilingual data. If we're talking about machine translation, and Spence was making a very good point. If you're doing pre-training or not, and I'm assuming that in the audience of localization, now that's more rare. So if we start from a machine translation application, people underestimate the value of data. Still, they need to get more data, and they can get more data in multiple ways. And TAUS is one of those ways. Very fast way to get a large amount of data. Then obviously in now starting from that baseline, then we're working on data first to extract more information from that data while we work with the translators, with the linguists. I think Spence was saying, and we have a very similar model on that. You work with translators and we collect a much larger amount of data when we do that. because we know the context for that sentence, because we know how much time it took to the translator to fix that error. And so we no longer work with edit distances, difference in characters, but we start to measure the cognitive effort in applying a change. We also collect things like the negative examples. We know what was wrong, and now we know what's good. And so that's an information that is as useful as the positive information. And then you can enrich the information. That's, I think, is the most exciting part of the journey here, because that is the things that we have been doing. So what I mentioned is what we have been doing in the past until now. But now that the models are so clever, we can extract and we can provide the model other new kind of information. And I want to give an example where the style guides, for example. So you take information that is written in a certain format, you're able to reprocess that information so that you instruct the model how to do certain things in a domain where you have no data to starting from. So exactly in the same way you teach a translator how to start, and that's why you need style guides. Now we can teach machines to do that. And so that's another step forward for all the companies or the startups that are starting without TMs. They can leverage all the past TMs of all the others, but for their style, they can extract those style guides and inject those directly into the system. The other incredible approach that I've seen recently, and I hope, Jaap, that we will be able to showcase how the TAUS data helped us achieving the new models as soon as we can release those models soon. But the most exciting thing for me was the chain of thought. So we take the past translations and we go there and we ask translators to explain why they translate certain things in a certain way. And they simply write the instruction. They say, look, I use this term for that reason. I prefer to use this other term because it sounds better. So a phonemic element that was never included, never in translation models. But we humans, we do care about those things. And now the translator can say, look, I don't like how this sounds, so I'm using these other terms. And they explain the reasoning behind reaching a certain translation. So we provide the source, the wrong translation, let's say the standard machine translation, their current perfect translation, done multiple reviews, then we ask them to comment that. And then we can inject this information again in training in a very sophisticated technique that I think you're starting to see in some models. So for example, Claude 3, I think the reason why it's a little better than OpenAI right now, because they just simply release a chain of thought before OpenAI did. And I think they will soon release it then. But these things apply to language translation. This is amazing, beautiful, because we can really now extrapolate the reasoning behind certain translation and propagate that to many other things. And the last thing, the expansion, it was full of shock for me this year. The other one was the multimodal.
Yeah.
So we provide to our translators in traditional localization, we provide screenshots because they need that to disambiguate the terms. They need to understand how much space do they have in the interface if they want to translate something. And that information is a visual information that we're not considering. And instead, it's absolutely necessary for machines. So you can take the TAUS data and enrich the data with multimodal information. That's a human process with linguists that they collect information and they provide the visual information to try to help the machine understand why the sentence was translated that way. So in a certain way, we're trying to rebuild what we forgot. In 20, again, the point for me is the parallel data, and then we enrich this information with many other things. And so it's a lot of new things.
Interesting. So that brings me to maybe a follow-on question for you, Manuel, if you want to comment on that. What Marco is just saying, chain of thought, style guides, you can feed everything now into the process to train your engines. But we're no longer talking about traditional MT engines. They can't take style guides or chain of thought. We're talking about LLMs. So What are you doing at Pangeanic? Are you still training old-fashioned MT engines, or is it totally shifted to now the LO? What would you say on Marco's suggestions then to expand the kind of data to train those new models?
Okay. Well, we're doing everything. That's the short answer. We released our own custom model. It's not a foundation model, but it's a custom model fine-tuned from Mistral 8 agents, 8.7b, back in February, and is one of the most visited pages on our website. It's open, unlike GPT. Eventually, we'll have to close it because some people may abuse it. But we don't collect data. There is no thumbs up, thumbs down. There's no feedback. We don't collect data there. But it's just to prove the type of things that we can do, and then have interesting conversations with potential users. That inevitably, almost I'd say 9 out of 10 prefer to have an NMT engine to an LLM.
Yeah.
For two reasons. The amount of investment in time that they have to put in controlling the LLM doesn't pay off considering the results. So I mean, it is great that, you have an English, Spanish, some easy language combinations, Italian, English, French, Chinese, even Japanese. Fine, we've had NMT engines for a long time. Now, if you have a challenging combination, and that has happened to us, over here, I want to translate from Russian into Catalan for local authorities. Well, it's going to be tough creating an NMT engine. Now, with an LLM, you have it. I want Chinese into Portuguese, bang, you have it. Better or worse, but you have something. So you have the power of, let's say, large Google Translate within a certain amount of languages. Ours is not customized. I think the last count was it expresses itself, including translation, in 12 or 14, I can remember, because we had to count Basque in there. But yes, we are creating NMT engines, and we are still selling NMT engines and subscription to our NMT engines because some of the points that Marco mentioned, because I want to control my terminology. Now, that's very difficult with an LLM. You think you have
No,
you can't. You feed the style guide. No, it will do funny things every now and again. And for no reason whatsoever, change 100% matches, change things that was not supposed to. Not that translation is bad. Going back to my opening remarks, the language is human. It's giving you human-like language, but it's not the professional human translation. And translators are very focused on terminology, on precision, on, like I was saying, I want to change this word in this particular case because fits, not fits, because it's better for the case. NMT right now is unbeatable for the translation task. Now, can you obtain higher quality or different services from an LLM? Yes, absolutely. What Marco was mentioning is what we call judging, using the LLM as a judge. So to change, for example, formality, we've used them very successfully to change large amount of content from the formal to informal. Okay, now that required some overview as well, because every now and again it changes things that were not supposed to be changing. But overall, it did massaging the content to a certain style, more or less. Yes, obviously you cannot do all those things with an NMT engine, which is right now for me state of the art. There's nothing better than an NMT for specific translation tasks. For general unspecific, okay, an LLM works, but it's a lot more expensive and it's a lot slower.
Right. Yeah. I see that we're going so fast have a couple of important, or at least one important question still to address. But thanks, Manuel. Shift back to Spence, and from your perspective, Spence, you obviously started a business with training your own MT engine. What about LLMs now, and what is your impression? Everybody says they're primarily trained on English data. Do you see a lack of multilingual capabilities? So in other words, translation capabilities in LLMs. What is your overall impression, and what are you using?
I think there are, I guess I would break this into two buckets. And the first bucket is the architecture of the system. And so this LLM rubric, you can have encoder side models, you can have encoder decoder models, you can have decoder side models. So there are different architectures that one can choose. And, typical, the encoder decoder architecture is what we have for the translation task. It turns out these decoder side models are effective for the translation task too. But there's a performance cost difference. And so I think as soon as you start getting into performance cost, there's a good argument to be made still for the encoder decoder models. Then there's the training regimen itself, which is training on whole documents versus parallel text. And there, if you're training on whole documents, then the training data starts to look like the distribution of the internet, which is high bias towards English. And so there have been a couple models that have come out where the developers have rebalanced the data sets. Manuel mentioned Mistral. That is one of their objectives. NVIDIA released a model 2 or 3 weeks ago that was specifically multilingual, that had a much more balanced distribution of training data. So one can fix that in the data preparation process. I think that, and then even some of the other capabilities we talked about, like feeding a style sheet into the input, or feeding, full document context into the input. I mean, with, like a big context window, like on Google's models, you could just put the entire training data into the input if you wanted to. But I still think that there's a compelling argument to be made for the encoder decoder models for actual production use, because of the performance cost benefits and the task accuracy. I think there are other arguments to be made for the decoder side models for production, but it really comes down to the task that you're using them for and what the performance cost characteristics of that are.
Yeah. Thank you, Spence. And we're in the last 10 minutes of our webinar. I'm going to ask a question and ask a somewhat concise answer from all of you. You've been front runners here in investing in data and training engines, training models now, and there are many more companies out there in the world now. That's our assumption, who are looking to do the same, because it becomes so easy, it becomes so sort of everyday's business, but still they may be hesitant because it's an investment. You have to buy data, find data, clean data, prep data. So this is the ROI question. What was the economic benefit? What were you aiming for? And what did you achieve? How did it help your business? Marco, you want to go first with that question?
Yeah, I think the reality is that I never understood why people don't invest in data. It's for us, it was made in the past. Now, historically, how we set up the data collection pipeline, the data that we acquired, including the TAUS data, there was a tremendous benefit for the growth of the company, for achieving certain results. And I think people are underestimating the value of that all the time. And recently, many people are buying a lot of computation recently. And there was an article that says that people are buying 17 times more computation than what they made in revenue. So there is a big investment in that direction. And I still think that people are underestimating the value of data in this space. And because data grows over time in value, and computation is depreciated very quickly. It's such an obvious thing for me. And so that's the only thing I can do is I share that, for us, it was a great investment. I'll do it again if I have to restart the company now.
All right. Manuel, I guess the same for you. Maybe you want to elaborate a little bit on that, but also, do you track it, the cost, and how do you measure the return that you're getting from data? Can you say something about that?
Well, we began a data journey with TAUS. That's something I have to praise you for. We were donors with the old TAUS Data Association, and we benefited from data from them. We began a data accumulation, even though I have to admit that 10 years ago, we did not have a clear idea of why we needed a lot of data. But we had the intuition that anything we wanted to do, we would need tons and tons of data. And that came from some talks that we had with Google guys that just measured and took KPIs and data points from everything, how many Gmails people send and so forth. Things that probably they were not going to use business, but eventually somebody found a use. So we utilized those data to customize an NT engines. It was very good. It has always had very high quality. Ran an exercise with TAUS to prove that just by injecting data with very little customization, engines improve like 20%. 20% or I can't remember. It's on TAUS websites, but a lot of points. To 20% on human evaluation or 2% blur, something like that. And that just proves how good and how beneficial of in-domain data it has when you inject it to either an MT engine or a large language model. By injecting specific knowledge into an area, you get better results. If you inject very general data, a couple of newspapers from Egypt, a couple of newspapers from Switzerland, a couple of newspapers from of things that we'll have local knowledge from Egypt and from Switzerland, but not very good at anything.
Thank you, Spence. I'm gonna ask you this because if you probably would know. I remember a paper, a study that Philip Koen did many years ago, like an X% increase in Blue score generated an X% reduction in post-editing cost. Are you applying such a formula in your business? Somehow, do you have a more exact way of measuring the immediate impact of the data?
Yeah, you're referring to Philip Koen did some work 10 years ago.
Long time ago.
Human correlation between Blue score and tumor, basically post editing rate. And there was kind of a weak correlation there. And we just look at it slightly differently, which is because most of our workflows are human in the loop, and it's interactive, meaning like it's a human interacting with a system in this sort of ChatGPT style where it's making predictions and they're choosing whether the prediction's right or it's wrong, and then it's responding back to them. we measure what we call word prediction accuracy, which is how many of the words does the human verifier, the linguist, accept. And that's just a percentage.
Yeah.
And then you can show as you make the model more accurate, the word prediction accuracy goes up, and that results in a reduction in time, which is what we care about. We really care about time. We don't care about like number of edits.
Yeah, of course. Anyway, so you follow that, you try to track that, and you see positive results. Otherwise, you wouldn't continue to make those investments.
That's like the single metric that we focus on. Is
so
whatever we do, it's trying to drive that number up.
Yeah, that's great. Ladies and gentlemen, here in virtual space, this is such an engaging and interesting conversation. I hate to say that we're only a few minutes before the end. I'm looking forward to the massively multilingual AI conference in Rome, where we can continue on stage all these conversations, and not just on stage and throughout the days there at the next TAUS conference. But just a quickie, Amir, for you again, because we launched data enhanced machine translation a few years back, and talking about measuring the blue score increases. We saw that consistently, right? Using good data in domain data, we could increase or improve the quality of the engines by what was the experience that what was it that we were seeing there?
Yeah, so we published 2 reports in the last 2 years, and we saw that you can easily improve the models by 25% in terms of blue scores by just providing the right domain-specific data sets. And of course, you can always provide a lot of data to improve just general models as well, but domain-specific tasks are more interesting, and you can actually filter domain-specific data sets out of these big data sets and then fine-tune any model on top of that. We already have some pre-fine-tuned model for different domains available, for example, on AWS and on Microsoft. But we are also doing fine-tuning for our clients for different domains as well. And we hopefully keep publishing these reports, comparing the different models and then fine-tuning results of those. But yeah, data is the key there, and you can always take the data and then get the data from online sources and do all the effort to do that. We already build that for you, so the data is readily available to do the customization. So that's the main.
Yeah. Almai, before we close, did you see any burning question in the Q&A?
Yeah. I think some of these questions can actually have a very short answer as well. There's one for Spence. Do you think that the human verification will ever completely go away? So if the AI is sufficiently trained, maybe indeed a short answer on that. What do you think?
Maybe, but not soon.
Okay. That is indeed
That's a short answer. That's good.
Yeah, thanks. And then a question for you, Jaap. Do you see the request for data? Is it still the same volumes for training data, or do you see any changes going up or down in there? But maybe Amir can also answer that.
Yeah, it depends who's asking. I mean, we know. I mean, as I said, we used to supply data mainly to the big tech companies and the trainers of MT engines, and that was often like, okay, give me everything in that language pair, or give me as much as you can deliver for that domain or that language pair. Now we see many new customers, and they can be very specific. Just one language pair, one domain, or even do a clustered search or a matching data request, as we call it. But yeah, we still also get requests for just everything we can deliver. So it's a wide variety. Yeah. But the type of customers is changing, and that again was the whole premise for this webinar. We see a big shift. We expect that there will be hundreds, if not thousands, of new interest parties for our data, and that's why we have also this data sale campaign. Just sort of a little pitch there. Check out our Data for AI page on our website.
Great.
More questions?
No, but
Before we say goodbye.
Yeah, I think we're right on the hour. So if more questions come up, I think everyone knows where to find us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you all for joining the webinar today. Mostly, of course, Marco, Spence, and Manuel, Amir, Jaap, for having such a delightful conversation. And we look forward to seeing many of you in Rome, indeed, as Jaap was saying, at the Massively Multilingual AI conference.
Good.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.